This has been a very powerful project, and as we come to a place where the work is not done, the work is still ever present, but as it's nearing the end, I'm thinking, wow, we did something, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to do anything.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's Finance and Appropriations Committee. I'm Chairman Mr. Cole. Today is August 9th, Wednesday, 2023. Today we have a fairly robust agenda, but I think we'll get through a lot this afternoon. I'm very encouraged. Glad to see you this afternoon, Dr. Chapman. All right. With that, we'll start with our call of order. Can we have a roll call?
Board President Adair.
Present.
Board Member Brown.
Here.
Chair Cole.
Present.
Mr. Green. Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Jordan. And Mr. Miller. We do have a quorum.
All right. With that, can we have an approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded? If there are no no's, we can move forward. Monthly finance report.
Okay. All righty then.
And thank you so much, Madam Vanover, Madam Treasurer.
Okay, so just to, there we go. Since I gave the quarterly report to the board last week, I believe it was, which was pointed to the November forecast, I thought it might make sense to do a more condensed June report to the FAC group, pointing to the May 5-year forecast since it's the more recent document. So it'll be a little different than that presentation. Mr. Green is here. What time we got? 4:03. All right. Okay, so again, this is a little bit more condensed, and it is pointing to the May 5-year forecast versus the plan, which is built off of the November forecast. So moving on. Okay, so for the month of June, revenues compared to the forecast came in a little above by around $9 million. Expenditures came in below the forecast, around $5.5 million. Cash balance ended the year around $9 million above. Fiscal year to date, this made some adjustments, obviously, compared to the quarterly numbers. So May, we still ended up revenues above the May 5-year forecast by $26.8 million. Expenditures were above by $17.8 million, and cash balance, obviously, this was fiscal year end, so it is the same as the June numbers. For the month-to-date activity, the biggest impacts that we had for the month of June was the XPROC we had for indirect cost as it related to ESSER, which was a journal entry that was processed year-end. It was around $8 million, and we received a second Medicaid payment. We normally get these once a year. last year's, for FY22, we didn't receive the payment until July. So this year, we actually ended up with 2 Medicaid payments. Last year, we had none. So assuming that timing gets back on cycle, we should see 1 a year. Fiscal year to date, again, because we had the XPROC, we had no transportation penalty. It was built into our forecast, but it was not assessed. And then we also received that second Medicaid payment. So our cash balance ended up higher than anticipated with the May 5-year forecast, despite that transportation penalty not being deducted. However, keep in mind, had that been assessed, we would have actually come in below the estimates. So on the revenue overview, state aid, again, was higher primarily due to the transportation penalty being built in but not assessed. And the restricted federal grants and aid is off a little bit because, again, it's a timing issue. That's a federal reimbursement for the qualified school construction bond subsidy that we were supposed to receive in June, and it was received in July. So you'll see it later as an adjustment in July. Other revenues will be discussed in a further slide, so. Biggest contributors on the other revenues, again, I feel like a bit of a broken record here. It's the second Medicaid payment and the XPROC for $8 million, but those were the 2 driving factors for the other revenues. On the expenditure sides, everything seemed fairly on point. The only real adjustments were some increased spending related to purchase service and supplies and materials, which was really timing. It's change in timing of when invoices were received and processed. So you'll notice when we get into July, those numbers are actually down a little bit because more invoices were paid in June than anticipated, and that means they weren't there to be paid for in July. So this is the graphical representation of our personnel and how it flows. You can obviously see that we ended up pretty on point. We finished the year based compared to the May 5-year forecast within 0.0012%, $800,000, pretty close. The nice thing about this chart is it very quickly points out the 3-pay months. You can see those peaks where we have a 3-pay month. You can also see, since the gray line represents last year, how that 3-pay month cycle moves. And the low spot in January is when we post the XPROC for the Wellness Week. So this is just a nice graphical representation of the trend of payroll and benefits over the year. And then this, again, really wish these were connected. So this is just another high-level summary side-by-side of all of those details that we provided, or that I provided earlier. So that's June. Moving right on into July. The one thing I will note, again, this is tied to the May forecast. This is the plan that we have in place for the start of this fiscal year, which is tied to the most recent board-approved forecast. So it is, in fact, the May forecast. Once the board adopts a November forecast, we'll update the plan to reflect those November numbers. But from now until that adoption, we will be pointing to the May forecast. The monthly estimates for our plan are based on an average or a blended percentage of prior year's actual activity, with the exception of a few items. There are some items, such as property tax settlements, that we know are one-time payments. We estimate to the most likely month of when that's going to occur, but so we choose one of those months instead of spreading it out. Otherwise, the plan's going to look off 10 out of 12 months. So we pick a month that we believe is the most appropriate. Sometimes we're on point, sometimes that's a little off, but that's part of why we bring a quarterly report to the board, because a lot of times that gets self-corrected within the quarter. But that monthly report to you guys will show those variances. Okay, so you'll also notice year-to-date and month-to-date are the same. It's the first month of the year, so there's not 2 sets of bar charts. Going forward, we'll have a comparison of month-to-date as well as year-to-date. Well, hey there, Mr. Miller. Okay, for the month of July, revenues came in above plan, around $4.2 million. Expenditures were below plan, around 8.6, bringing the cash balance above plan by $21.7 million. Primary monthly activity on the revenue side of things, we received property tax advances in the total of, I can't see it actually, 191 million, it looks like. About 5.7 under plan, or 3%, but we have not received the final settlement. That should come in August, so we anticipate that we will not only make up that gap, but we'll hopefully come in pretty close there. And just as a side note, we do not request advances in June. A lot of schools request advances in June, and that makes the picture a little muddier as it relates to the timing of revenues versus expenses. We prefer to keep the revenues and expenses in the same time frame. So we purposely do not request advances in June. We wait and ask for them in July, which is why we get such a big hit in July. So. State aid is above plan by 1.2 million, again, primarily due to the fact that we have a $15 million penalty built in for the transportation penalty. You take that divided by over the 12 months, that's about what we're off. So we're pretty on point. One thing to keep in mind, and I did mention this at the board meeting as well last week, the increases related to the continued phase-in will be reflected in the August payments. The increases related to the updated cost sets and enrollment numbers and those types of things will be reflected in October. One's tied to appropriations, the other is tied to the statute. So we will see those kinds of adjustments as we move forward. Again, restricted federal grants, QSCP payment came in July instead of in June, which is why it was showing as lower in June, but it's now showing as higher in the month of July. The other financing source is the end of the year advances that are tied to ESSER, and we've had, this is what, the third year we've had this kind of a phenomenon where we have to finish even, so we do a journal to transfer that in, and then it comes back. So this is that return advance back to the general fund. They ended up a little bit higher this year than estimated, but within at least closer than we estimated in the first year. Let's see. Okay. So with regards to the other revenues, we've got, again, annual estimates based on historical levels. For the interest, we are actually scheduled to talk with our investment advisors to get a better picture of this number to make it more accurate, because we ended up way over last year in terms of actuals versus what was forecasted. So we want to try to hone in on that a little bit closer and be a little bit more on point without being too, we want to stay conservative with our estimates, but we want to make sure that we're capturing what we anticipate closer than what we have in the previous year. And again, we had a small Medicaid reimbursement payment as a result of our direct billing. Personnel for the month came in under plan, 7.2 million. Primary reasons for this is plan design. We take the estimated cost for the year, we divide it up, we factor in the 3 pay months, and then we spread the remainder over the other 10 evenly. So in the month of July, you're looking at 21 pay staff that are not on the docket. They're not included in those totals. And we're also assuming 100% staffing levels, which we all know is not the case currently. So those factors are why we end up under plan, at least early on. Hopefully, as we get more in, we get those other staff on and we get more fully staffed, those numbers will come closer to the plan. Other variances, supplies and materials, and again, that's another function of that phenomenon we saw where we had more invoices processed and paid in the month of June, so now we had less carryover encumbrances to get paid out in the month of July. Okay, and now we're at the very beginning of our fun little chart. So we've got the plan. You can see prior year. We came in for salary and benefits, came in above previous year, but below the estimate, and again, for the reasons we stated earlier. So to summarize, again, we are up 4.2 million in revenue, down 8.6 in expenditures. So for the month of July, our cash balance was up by 21.7 million. Questions?
Are there any questions at this point, team? All right. We can then move on if there aren't. And glad to see everybody made it here. I know it was an ugly downpour earlier this afternoon, so glad to see everyone here. We can go Treasurer's Office updates and start with the bond defeasance.
Okay, so just to provide an update, and we do have our municipal advisors in the audience if there are questions beyond my technical knowledge. But as a result of the board acting back in December, we got all of our OFCC projects closed out. All the vendors were satisfied, all of the OFCC debts and requirements were satisfied, and there were funds left over. Predominantly, they were in interest earnings, but as a function of the fact that that was tied to a very specific ballot language for the bond issues, we have very limited options to use those funds. So we consulted with bond counsel, and under their advisement, we were encouraged to move forward with defeasing the debt, which, given that we have refunded a lot of these, there are none of the debt has callable debt currently, so we can't just pay the debt off now. So we are going through a defeasance process where we shift the monies into an escrow until the call date, and then we utilize those funds to pay down the debt when those call dates become up. So we will be bringing to the board on the 15th a rather lengthy resolution to essentially authorize moving forward with a defeasance that will then proceed with and hopefully get that closed by the end of August. So this is essentially just taking those additional revenues from all the OFCC projects and setting them aside to use to help pay off the outstanding debt we have for said bond issues. So that is the high-level, non-technical round of explanation that I can provide. If you have specific questions, we do have much more qualified people here to answer them.
Are there any specific, and what I'd like to do is take the opportunity to invite you up if there's anything that you'd like to offer as clarifying point that maybe wasn't captured in what was stated. I'd love to have you guys help us level set.
Yes. Let's say we have Marvin Founds and Jeremy Buskirk here from Baker Tilly. They are our municipal.
And good afternoon, gentlemen.
And I am Marvin Founds, that's Jeremy Buskirk. It's good to see some familiar faces. Been in front of this group before, it's been a few years. Don't really have anything additional to add, except I know Treasurer Vanover has used the example in our discussions. A refunding for a school district is very much like a home mortgage being refinanced. This is a little different in that there is some cash available. A homeowner may have some cash available and wants to pay down their mortgage and take out some of the existing amount that's outstanding as principal. And that's what's happening here for the school district.
And again, that's just specifically, though, for the use of future debt payment, yes?
Yes, as described by Treasurer Vanover, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's the current coupon on what's outstanding? Or what are they above or below current interest rates?
Well, the current coupons are probably a little bit higher. These coupons range from, I believe, 3 to 5%. So through the process of identifying the most beneficial maturities to set aside in escrow, take out the highest coupon or the longest maturity, kind of the combination of both in each series of bonds that are being addressed through this action.
And as a point of clarification, which that's part of why the resolution that's being brought to the board is so lengthy, because it identifies all of those various issues. There are 4 tax-exempt issues, and then there are 4 taxable issues, correct? I think my numbers are right.
4 and 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4 of each. So we have, and those require different stipulations, different requirements as we move forward with the defeasance, but we have 8 different bond issues that we're going to be able to utilize these funds to defease some debt.
I believe the resolution will have $12 million, approximate $12 million par amount on it. There are savings that will be happening because these maturities, this amount of debt will be paid off, and there won't be interest costs down the road for the school district in these cases. So right now the estimate is about $2.6 million in interest cost savings for the school district.
All right, if there aren't any questions, thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for being here. We can, go ahead.
Question, just because, you know, the public might think, oh, you just got this money. Why can't you spend it on X, Y, and Z? So can maybe we talk about why it cannot just be put somewhere else and used for, say, academics or to pay people?
And that was what we approached bond counsel with, to understand what our options were, because we kind of asked the same thing. Can we move it to PI and use it there? Can we move it somewhere else and utilize it in another way? But since it is tied to a bond issue, and it is tied to very specific ballot language for said bond issues, we are very limited in what our options are. So this was their advice, was that we need to utilize it to defease the debt and get that off our books. But yes, absolutely. We asked, we hoped. We were wrong.
All right. Thank you. So now we can move on to cash handling in this update.
Okay. Yeah, this is just a brief update. Again, last board meeting, I spoke on the positive things that came out of the ironically termed bad seminar about the budget. As Aaron Rausch pointed out when he spoke, there were a lot of good things, and I reported on those. This is one of the not so good things that came out of it. So 2 years ago, we effectively removed cash handling at all of our ticketed events by moving on to an online platform for all of our athletic and arts events. 2 years, it's worked well. We've eliminated that risk. We've taken that out. And now, as a function of the current budget bill, we are now required to accept cash at all of our ticketed events. We have a team of people together working on what that resolution is going to be and how we're going to handle it, but I just wanted to make the committee aware of the fact that we eliminated one of our primary risks, and it's back, not by our choice, but it is there. So we'll deal with it. We'll move forward. We'll get a plan in place, but I wanted to make everybody aware.
I appreciate it. Dr. Ross, if you can just generally illuminate what House Bill 33 is actually positioned to have us now do in taking those steps backwards.
Certainly. As one of the many gifts that came to us through the biennial appropriations process, this language was added in the Senate, maintained through conference committee. In short, for any ticketed event we have, we will have to accept cash. If we do not have cash, if the individual's able to prove that they have cash for said event, say it's a $10 ticket, we say we don't take cash, but they show you a $10 bill, then they get in for free.
Mm-hmm. But because of the wonderful work of this administration, not only did we solve a previous problem in cash handling that gives every person the option to actually purchase their tickets virtually with us, we are also making sure that we're going to be able to accept cash. So that's awesome. I thank you. I just wanted to make sure we knew that, that we're not making no cash an option at all.
Right, we're going to be compliant, but going back to the problem that we had, these were things that the state auditor had huge problems with. And we were not, I mean, we just got a clean audit report for the first time. And so we have to go back and, really think about that, because as a district our size and the requirements for cash handling, it is burdensome to us and causes us to have compliance problems. And so, again, that's our friends at the State House, not understanding or taking into account what our needs are. It's a requirement, so the public can certainly pay with cash. We prefer for you to pay the electronic means. That just helps everyone out. It's super easy. You can pre-buy your tickets. But I want to ask the Treasurer's Office, because this is an actual audit issue. Are we doing any kind of internal cross-collaboration with our internal audit about the...
They were actually involved in the discussion that we had to try to lay out a plan to address it. But one thing I will point out as it relates to the audit issues that we had for the timely deposits, if you recall, we had a policy change that effectively deemed any safe in any of our school buildings as being on deposit with the Treasurer's Office. So hopefully going backwards and having to accept cash will hopefully not result in any additional audit findings going forward because of that change in the policy. Because that was part of it, because a lot of the issues that we were facing, some of it was not even our doing, it was because we were having issues with our armored car pickup service. That's one of our biggest hurdles, is we're not their priority. We're the big fish in a lot of ponds, but we're not a big fish to a Garda. We're not their focus. So we have a lot of challenges in getting those pickups made timely, and and those types of things. So a lot of the issues that came through on those timely deposit findings that we had on previous audits was not even within our control. So we did make that policy change, so hopefully that will preserve that clean audit piece of it, but it doesn't eliminate the risk that they've now reintroduced to our district. So.
Are there any questions from the committee? Any additional thoughts, comments? Okay. Moving on, then we'll go to preview of fiscal year 2024.
I'm going to let Eric take this one.
Thank you very much. We have what the meeting topics will be for fiscal year 2024. Welcome to fiscal 2024. In September, we will have another ESSER update. As you recall, we've been doing quarterly ESSER updates, so we're going to maintain that schedule. In October will be our 5-year forecast presentation, implications on future funding tied with that. November, we will have AlloView. As you may recall, we had AlloView come and present a couple months ago on a couple of modules we purchased, Manage and Budget. We're going to have them come and demonstrate the Manage module to everybody, kind of let everybody know, let the public know, let the board know, let the committee know what that's able to do and how we're actually moving forward and providing additional transparency as well as knowledge and expertise for our staff. We're going to be able to, we're taking a bunch of accounting spreadsheets that work for us, but don't necessarily work for everybody else, and turn them into a dashboard. And we're going to lay this out so folks can understand, have a better handle on their finances at the building and department level. In January, we'll have an update on the November 2023 levy, however that comes down. In February, another ESSER update. We'll have another quarterly ESSER update. I'm sorry, I missed December, didn't I? I skipped the whole month of December. ESSER update again. So there we go. I don't know why I missed December. It's a great month. Holidays, couple breaks, it's great. We'll jump back February. We're back again for ESSER. March, we're doing the 2025, yes, fiscal year 2025. Already talking about it. We'll have those budget presentations before this committee. In April, the May 5-year forecast presentation. In May, we will go ahead and do our self-sustaining funds presentations, so our adult education, latchkey, WCB, et cetera. And then in June, we'll end once again with the one of the likely final ESSER updates at that point in time. So that's a preview of what's to come for FAC for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. If we can, I'd like to make sure that we do some sort of facts-based conversation preliminary to November regarding the
Working on factual data that we compare.
Awesome.
Keep everybody educated and understanding everything.
Okay, thank you very kindly. So we'll circle back on that.
Yep.
Are there any additional questions, concerns? Madam President? All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, motion is seconded. If there are no nays, we are adjourned. Thank you so much for coming this evening.